Hi, this is Dr. A, and I'm going today to try and show you how to run some extended events on Azure SQL Database. And I am starting from scratch. I do not have a database. I do not have anything actually at this point, just an Azure subscription for education. And we'll start from scratch. And I'm starting here on this page. This is from May 25, 2023. So this is relatively recent. And there are some prerequisites we have to fulfill. And then there are two phases where we're looking at phase one, the PowerShell code, and then the Transact SQL code, which we'll try and do everything through that, although I'm going to use SSMS quite a bit for that as well. The prerequisites note that you might have Azure RM and you need to migrate to Azure PowerShell. Yeah, if you need to do that, follow some directions in here. There's good stuff on the internet to show you how to do that. Let's jump right in with a PowerShell. And they say go through the PowerShell and do a bunch of changes to the PowerShell script to match what you're doing, and then run it. And then they give you this rather lengthy PowerShell script. Now, I have copied that PowerShell script up here, and I'm going to show you what I've done. Um, if you're interested, you can take a look at that really quick and pause the video and look at what I did there, but this is what I did to delete the Azure RM and then set the execution policy to remote signed, and before you're running, make sure you log in. So you have to connect to the AZ account here, and that's where I am. I've done all of those things, so this will clear the screen when we're done, but other than that, this is the rest of what we're going to do. And they say, make sure that you do all of the to-dos, change all of the to-dos. Well, okay, so they start right here. Now I've changed all mine to dones, okay? So you'll see that I do to done instead of to do to done. Edit the variables, assign to these rows, especially the first few, but they didn't say the first few like the first two, the first three. This really should be the first two. Okay, make sure that you have your subscription name. Mine's Azure for Students, and the group that I'm going to be working with, which is going to be data. Now, they assume you have a database here. So I have to stop right here on line 26 and go create that. So if you want to, you can stick with me or you can skip to the next section. So at this point, let's skip back over here to our Azure, and I'm going to create a database. So I'm going to go down here to SQL Databases. I'm going to say, hey, let's create a database. And it says, oh, yay, let's do that. Okay, so subscription is Azure for Students. I'm going to create one because I have no groups there right now at all. So I'm going to create this as data. Really creative name for that. The database name for this one, don't remember what I did, but I think it was, well, I don't remember. So we're just going to go with PRA data. Okay. And the server name, let's go with PRA data. Okay, we don't have one, so we're going to have to create a new one. We'll call this one PRA data. This is our location, US East. Use only Azure. I want SQL for both of those. I'm going to put in DRA for my server admin name, and we'll do a password of all right. Long password, but it's what I use for all my test databases at this point. And there we've got a new database, DRA data, a new data source. Do you want to use Elastic Pool? No. This is compute journal storage, geo. All of this stuff is fine. So we're going to go ahead and create this one, and we'll let that run and we'll let that finish in the background and hop back to our PowerShell. So I've got this Azure for students. I've got it set for data. I've got the expiry time to start from yesterday and go till tomorrow from yesterday. I am doing this at US East, and the rest of these don't really matter. Okay. In fact, you do need to change these first four, probably, really, right? So I should make this 4 to 5. Because it probably does matter what you say your storage location is. But these, just name whatever you want, okay? So I've got a SQL storage account, SQL storage container, a SQL event, whatever. And I've got a SAS policy is RWL, which they say to leave alone, which I will. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and execute these things. And we'll execute that. And so we've now done step 2. We've connected, we've done step 2. Step 3 is to choose an existing subscription. So we just need to execute that line there to select the subscription that we're going to run, and it does that. And then we go through and clean up the old ones. Now I don't have an old one here. I can run this, but if I do, it's just going to say, are you sure you want to remove that and all its contents? And I can say yes. But there's nothing there. So this step 4 is one we can come back to clean up later. Step 5 says create a storage account. This might take several minutes, but I do need to create a new storage account. So I'm going to do that, and we'll let that run. Warning, upcoming breaking changes. It's not a valid storage account name. Storage account name must be between 300 and length. Use numbers and lowercase letters only. Okay. So I do really need to make these SQL storage account. I'm sure these are all going to be the same way. SQLS container S T E extend and SQL. Okay, so I would have to actually do these again. I've changed those. Well, I didn't change the East, but that's all right. I've chosen existing subscription, and my subscription name is accurate. I've cleaned up some, so I am ready to create the storage account, and I'll do that. Now I'm going through these piece by piece. Obviously, you could get all of this stuff set and just run it all in one shot. And that would be the cross your fingers method, right? Cross your fingers method and go. And that's finished, and we now have a SQL storage account on data, East US. Okay. And we're now ready to run this access storage, and I'm going to run it all the way to there, so it'll actually show it on the screen. And this is our, our access key for the storage. And they say Azure storage account command will include a reminder of PowerShell appeal scripts. Continues. So next we need to get the context for our new AZ storage context. And this is going to just create the context. And then we're going to create the object in the new AZ storage container itself. Okay, that doesn't take very long. This one now creates the new AZ storage access policy, which also won't take very long. And then this is where we try and generate a SAS token. So this is where, if you're going to run into problems, you're likely going to run into it here. I did not, so we're good. And now we're going to display this stuff. Now, at this point, we're done with the setup of the storage account. And all of this has to do with the fact that you're doing something at Azure instead of doing it locally. So now we're ready to move on to part 2. And part 2 is related to SQL Server. So we're going to need to pull up SQL Server and connect. Now to do that, I'm going to pop back over here and show that my DRA data is up and available. and I can look at connection strings here or do whatever. So let me get connected and I'll be right back. Now, part of getting connected to an Azure database involves making sure that you have access to that. I'm going to go to my all resources over here, which is an easy place to get things from. I'm going to go to my DRA Data SQL Server, and I'm going to get some access. So I'm going to go to Show Network Settings over here, and you'll notice that it doesn't provide anything right now. And it says add your IP address. So I'm going to add my IP address here, and my IP address is easily pastable. So I don't want anybody else. I'm just doing a single IP address here. I'm saving that, and in order to be able to access this, I have to get all of that done. So we have to successfully update the firewall rules, successfully update the public server network, and at that point I can actually connect. So I think that's the first step. So after typing in my username and password from SQL Server Management Studio, I'm now connected to dradata.database.windows.net. And if you look in here, there's a DRA data database right there. And I can run a new query on it. Okay, so what query am I going to run? Well, that would be this big long query that is now, I'm going to paste into here from the web page. So let's go back to the web page for just a moment. This is my SQL events. I've done the PowerShell code, and I'm ready to do phase 2 transact SQL, and they say, hey, don't forget when you do this that you change the settings in here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and walk through my script to make sure that all of that stuff is there. So to do that, I'm going to go up here to the very beginning and go ahead and just start executing things. Now they have F8 is used to execute individual things. I can execute that, and then I can say, hey, if exists from drop this table. I happen to know I haven't done that yet, so let's just go ahead and create the table. Oops. And execute that, and let's insert a value into it. Okay, and if not exists, select from this. There's going to be my super secret create master key encryption by password. If you've ever had a class from me, you'll recognize that password right away. That's the one I use for all my demos, so it's long and complicated but easy to remember. So we've created our new master key encryption by password, and then I say if exists, select, and here's where we need to change the information. So the first thing we need to do is go back over here, and I need to start looking at this storage account. That's going to be my storage account, and I need to paste that there, which makes it smaller. And then this is my container name, and I think I just named it container. It would have been a whole lot easier if I had kept the same names as the last time I tried this. So it looks like really the only thing I have to do is delete the word name from these. SQL storage account, SQL storage blah blah blah. And so we're going to fix that one there. We'll say if it exists and run it. And then we have to do the same thing here. And now this is my secret service that I have to get from over here as well. So I just have to grab this and copy that. And we'll take this from here and drop it into there. It's a little bit longer than the last one, but that's because I have a different SQL extended events SAS token name. Now that I've updated that, I can go ahead and create the database scoped credential. This is the important part actually here. I have to actually have this credential in here to be able to start setting this stuff up. Now, this takes me all the way to step 3. You'll notice step 2 is to create key and create credentials, which we've done. Step 3 is to create an event session. Now this one I'm going to rename because I don't like this name, long running events. There, I've got something that's a little easier. And I'm going to call this long running events. So there, now we have, if it's there, drop it. Now I know it's not there, so we're going to create this long running events. And this is all there. Okay, this is fine. SQL Server. They're going to create an event session. Now, this is something I'm going to tweak a little bit. I'm going to add an event, but I don't like the SQL statement starting. Although that's an event that will work just fine. We want to actually tell if a SQL statement has been running for a long time. So I want to run the completed one, the SQL statement completed. And that's fine. I'll just name it that. And I can update an action on this where the statement is update like this table, this GM tab employee star. And I can add a target. And this is going to be a file name. And then I have to take out the name here and the name there to update that. And that's a rather long create statement. And so we'll execute that. And it completed successfully. And at this point, I want you to notice that there's an extended events here. And if I do that, there's sessions. And there's now one called long running events, which I just created. And before I even go in on this, I'm going to go in here and do properties and edit a few things because there's a couple of things on here that I want to change that I can't. I mean, it's easier for me to do them here, but it's been created and I can't really create it from here. So you have to create it in SQL because you need SQL, the credentials and the key and stuff. And I want to go into events, and I do have the SQL completed, so I can verify that that is actually statement completed. That's the one that I want. SQL statement. Let's see. Starting SQL batch completed. I'm just going to put in the word completed. Okay. We've got begin, commit, have, trans, SQL statement completed. So this is the one I'm actually using right here. Just nice to verify that it's there. And I want to configure it. Okay. So we're going to configure a couple of things. And one of the things I want to configure is what it's going to report. And I want to know what the client name is. I want to know who the host name is. I'd like to know what the database name is, and I'd like to know definitely the SQL text. Sometimes people want to know what the SQL, if you want to see the query plan, that's sometimes interesting to go look up, but you have to get the query plan hash signed and use that to go actually look up what the query plan is. And I'm going to do the TSQL stack and the username. Okay. So that'll give me some extra pieces of information. And then I also want to have an additional filter on this. And I want to filter it by duration for greater than, and we're going to put in here about 200,000. Okay, now what is 200,000? It's 200,000 milliseconds. And I'll leave that to your ingenuity to figure out how I determined whether what this was in milliseconds or in microseconds. But it's actually 200,000, microseconds, not milliseconds, microseconds. So that's times 10 to the negative 6th. So what I'm saying here is if you have something that is 0.2 of a second long, runs 0.2 of a second or longer, actually it's longer than 0.2 of a second, I want to know about it. And at that point, when I click OK, it's going to update my long running events. And I probably could have done that all in SQL, but I didn't. And this right here alters that event to start it. Well, let's just start it. Okay. At this point in time, then I can do you know, some queries. Right now, I don't expect any of these queries to actually cause any problems. Okay, so I can run these queries. They're all running just fine. But this one right here, and by the way, this line right here is not in the original. That's one that I put in there. I did a select update after updates, but I'm doing a wait for delay of 1 second. So you'll notice this does take a second to finish, and it does finish, but it takes a little bit longer than the other ones. Now, at this point in time, I can stop this. So they alter this session to stop it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And we should have exactly one thing in here. And I'm going to go ahead and use this select statement that they provided us that says, select this as this cast, blah, 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 from sys.exe_file_target_read_file from this location. And notice it doesn't have the XEL on the end of it. So let's run that one. And I get nothing. Okay, there is nothing there. And I can't do anything about it. I can't run, you know, there's no custom reports to run. I can refresh it, but it's not there, okay? So that does cause me some consternation. Okay, consternation averted. Part of the problem was I hadn't changed this SQL storage account name to SQL storage account and long running or account query. The other thing is that I don't know if you noticed it or not, but in the long running queries under filter, I inadvertently added a second one, probably as I was exiting there. I didn't notice it there, but and just so you can see that it is just filtering for the long running queries, I'll show it here. It is still running at this point in time. And if we look at the events, as soon as this comes up, we can see that the events are filtering based on configuring there. Filtering the predicate is just on the duration. So there was another row in here. I'm just going to cancel that because I haven't changed anything. And I'm going to go ahead and run this query, which will now show us some stuff. In fact, 4 of them because I've ran it a couple of times. And this gives us a bunch of meaningless information: the package, the object ID, the object name, the event data, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's this, they say, click the next cell to browse the results. So if you click that browse results, this actually will tell you that the duration for this one was 1,340 microseconds. Okay, so I think I changed it back to 1 second because I was tired of waiting for 2 seconds. But anyway, you can go through and actually look at it all here. And I'd like to be able to look at it here, but I can't. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my SQL here. I'm going to go back to home for a minute, and I'm going to go, hey, I want to go look at my storage browser. Now, if it's not there, you can always type in storage browser. And because I've just used it, browser, it's near the top. But you want to go to your storage account here. And I'm interested in blob containers. That's where this is storing it. And you'll notice that it actually has 3 of them here. And so I want the latest one. This is this one here. And you'll notice it says least. It's available. This is least. That means somebody's using it right now. And I need to go back here and go ahead and stop this session. So I can just right click and stop it. Go back to here. And I can download it. I don't care if it says least. Honestly, I don't. If I want to refresh it, I suppose it might switch to available. But I'm going to go ahead and download that one. and I'm just going to open this up. And interestingly enough, this is going to open in SQL Server Management Studio, and it's going to show me these 4 different things, and all this information will be in the details. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that if I want to, I can go up here and say, hey, let's choose some different columns. I don't want just the name, the timestamp. I also want the client app name, the client host name, the duration, the, let's see, SQL text, and that, and then say the username. Okay, probably the text, I'm going to send that last, and I'll say okay. And now this has everything in it. Okay, I can look at the, this was SQL Management Studio, query, and I can look at the text down here by just double clicking, and it shows me all the different things. You'll notice these are all the wait for delays. There was a select object as something, and it took 2.359 seconds. Why would it take so long? Well, it's getting this off of the storage server, so there's some latency there. This is one of the things that you pick up in any kind of cloud service, is that there are some latency. You have to be very careful about latency issues in your programming, because those things do exist. So there we go. I have, and I can run a bunch of other queries and have them not show up in here. I did run bunches of other queries, and they didn't take long enough, so they didn't show up in here. So this is my trouble queries, mostly the wait for queries. And I probably should have made something longer. If I'd have made this like a third of a second or something, this one wouldn't have showed up in here. And so maybe I would want to do that to increase the time. That's something we could do. All right, so this is showing up in a completely different browser, obviously, or a SQL Server Management Studio. If I go back here and look at my first one, I still have all of this stuff up and running. And at this point in time, I think we've accomplished our goal. You can actually audit your stuff and running on Azure using extended events, and we've shown how you can look at longer running events. All right, I hope this is helpful to you, and we'll see you again later.